UFC Fight Night Vegas 84, Ankalaev versus Walker 2 just took place, and I'm going to go through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main event, giving my reaction and breakdown to every single fight on the card, and my overall event recap as well, starting with the early prelim opener of Joshua Van versus Felipe Bunes. Now, Felipe Bunes kept it somewhat competitive for the first round, but once the second round came along, it was a night and day difference. Joshua Van started walking him down, beating him up, knocking him down, finishing him off, hurting him with the body shots. The body shots of Joshua Van are what makes him so fun to watch fight. And then what he'll do is he'll find Felipe Bunes up against a cage, throw some body shots, some headshots, and then randomly fling a head kick up there as well whilst in close range. He's a very, very good pressure fighter. Felipe Bunes looked like he had some sting in his shots in the first round to at least keep some level of respect. But once round 2 came along and Felipe Bunes started to slow down a little bit, Joshua Van started to smell blood, started to walk him down, and finished him off against a cage. No, not against a cage. Finished him off on the ground after taking him down, after working him up against a cage and eventually hurting him there. There was one point where he's swinging on Felipe Bunes, landed a couple of decent shots. This card was a really good card, so I'm actually having trouble remembering this, but I was watching it as I was getting ready and loading up the stream. Landing some really good body shots, and then instead of just wailing on Felipe Bunes up against a cage, he actually at one point shot a double leg on him and got him down. Very, very smart work. Worked good on top. Landed some good ground and pound to finish off the fight. And Joshua Van, very technical, very composed, small for a flyweight, not the longest of reach, but he controls the distance very well. Really enjoy watching him fight, and he's very, very young for a flyweight as well. Joshua Van is going to go on to become something big in the flyweight division. We can only hope. Definitely time for a jump up for him at flyweight. We move on to another fighter on the card, or another fight on the card. Nikolas Motta versus Tom Nolan. Everyone had Tom Nolan to win. Tom Nolan didn't win. Nikolas Motta KOs him in the first round badly. Lots of ground and pound after dropping him with a hook on the feet. And it was just Tom Nolan throwing shots on the feet with no care in the world what was coming back his way. I think like a lot of these taller, size advantage fighters in these divisions, they started to get this almost level of arrogance when they're throwing shots. And Tom Nolan was arrogant out there. He's throwing big shots, not a care in the world. He actually got stung a few times on the chin, but he just kept going, kept swinging shots. The kicks that he was going for with his chin wide up in the air whilst he's on one leg. Where's the teeps? Where's the jab? You're the taller dude with the reach advantage. He got scrappy with Nikolas Motta and ended up paying the price and got caught right on that chin, way up in the air as he's throwing a kick. And down goes Tom Nolan. Nikolas Motta finishes him off with ground and pound. Nolan did look like he was trying to recover, but couldn't do so. And Nikolas Motta gets a job done by TKO. We move on. Up the card, Westin Wilson versus Gene Silva. Gene Silva, let's talk about this dude. The walkout of this man. Insane. Insane the walkout that this dude pulled off. It was like he was walking out to fight Ngannou at UFC 300 in the main event. Such tense atmosphere, set the stage, put it all on the line. I mean, I was paying attention after that. As soon as I saw his walkout, I was like, okay, we got to pay attention to this one. Westin Wilson is terrible at fighting. But Gene Silva walking out, staring down the camera the whole time, making there a bit of tension in the ring. Gets out there, beats the hell out of Westin Wilson. Beats him up, rocks him multiple times, drops him now and again. I was actually surprised that he didn't get a finish sooner. But Westin Wilson, I guess, was just toughing it out and trying to stay in the fight. Westin Wilson. I mean, this is where I really do get a little bit alarmed by the level of MMA competitors. The way he was throwing shots is like he's not in a fight right now. You know? And then this was a lock of the card, by the way. Gene Silva was going to knock out Westin Wilson, obviously. But Westin Wilson, the way he was throwing kicks out there, Gene Silva had intensity from the get-go. He was landing counter hooks, was landing good shots on Westin Wilson. Gene Silva, this is. Landing good shots, swinging for the fences sometimes on Westin Wilson. And Wilson was just lifting up his lead leg, tapping out a teep kick, like light little flick of a body kick that he would throw out there off of his lead leg as well. He landed a good 1-2 at one point, I think it was. But dude, you're on the back foot. This dude's intense, Gene Silva, tracking you down, swinging for you, trying to get you out of there. And he looked like he was just flinging his leg in the air with no care in the world. And boom, he gets KO'd in the first round. Was not switched on. I don't think he's UFC level. I never thought he was UFC level. Gene Silva gets it done by TKO in the first round. And he's autistic on the microphone afterwards. So really looking forward to seeing where his career goes from here. Looking forward to his next fight. We move on. Up the card, Farid Basharat versus Taylor Lapilus. Little bit of a dull one on the card. We had some momentum. In fact, this card was actually a really, really fun card to watch. But this one kind of grinded it to a halt a little bit. Farid Basharat won the fight very clearly, in my opinion. Pretty competitive fight, though. But at the end of the day, it came down to the grappling of Farid Basharat. And not even just the grappling of him, but the willingness to grapple. Even if he didn't get all of the takedowns or establish real dominant control and dominate any of these positions, he kept shooting. And even though Taylor Lapilus had really good takedown defense and got his underhooks and fought for wrist control, Farid just kept shooting takedowns on him. Double legs, single legs, switching it up, single leg, trip out the rear leg while he's balancing. He just mixed up the takedowns, worked him against the cage, got the back, dragged him down. Even if he got back up, he just mixed it in, and that was enough to get him to win. Taylor Lapilus was actually doing a little bit better with the boxing on the feet, with like straight shots and jabs now and again that he would land, but Farid was chewing up the leg with kicks, and there was some other stuff that he was going for. I think both of them were throwing body kicks at each other. Farid was just doing pretty good, landed occasionally on the chin as well on the feet, but it was the grappling that changed this fight, chaining together his takedowns and pressuring Taylor Lapilus up against the cage. Oh yeah, I forgot to talk about the groin shot that was in Joshua Van versus Felipe Bunes, but whatever. We move on. Marcus McGhee versus Gaston Bolanos. Fight of the night, in my opinion, or was it fight of the night? Because there were some fun fights beyond that as well. So I'm not sure. I think Bautista versus Simone might have been as fun. But in terms of like fun, Marcus McGhee was winning the majority of the fight, don't get me wrong, but Gaston Bolanos took some really powerful shots. Round one, it was a little bit more even. Both guys landing their shots. McGhee actually went for a takedown in round one on Gaston Bolanos, got right back up from it, which I was very surprised by. So that was really good of him to work back up from the takedown. But eventually, Marcus McGhee did get a decent position of control over Gaston Bolanos towards the end of round one. Landed some really good shots on the feet as well. But round two is where Marcus McGhee started to do his best work. Hurting Gaston Bolanos, wobbling him, dropping him, piecing him up. I thought the referee was going to stop it a lot earlier than he did, but Gaston Bolanos kept throwing back, kept moving, staying in the fight, trying to keep going, but Marcus McGhee just kept the pressure up too much, landing a bunch of shots, and eventually Gaston Bolanos just wilted against the cage. Could he have let it go on a little bit longer to watch him get finished properly? Yes, but from the body language of Gaston Bolanos, he had a long time to try and change the way that round was looking, and Marcus McGhee just started dominating him in round two. So, great job by Marcus McGhee. Got caught a couple of times, but really effective striker and really fun to watch on the feet. I swear, bantamweights are some of the most fun to watch. Maybe not Farid Basharat, but on average, bantamweights are the most fun, I feel like. Some of their striking is just amazing to watch. Matthew Semelsberger versus Preston Parsons. Semelsberger, dude! All the ability, all the physicality, the knockout power's there. We're just not working it together, Semelsberger. A lot of people pick Semelsberger here. I actually did want to try and pick Preston Parsons. My underdogs of the card that I missed up on were Parsons, Taylor Lapilus, and also I wanted to maybe hedge a bet that possibly... I can't remember what my other underdog was. Arlovski? No, not Arlovski. I don't remember. I think those were the underdogs that I was looking at. Parsons and Taylor Lapilus. But Semelsberger couldn't get it done. I didn't end up picking any underdogs. I think I went 4-2 on the prelims. And I got this one wrong. Preston Parsons won the fight. Decision, mixed in his grappling, worked some moments on the ground, landed some good elbows in moments here and there, and was doing good on the feet as well with his body kicks. Semelsberger is good, but he just couldn't get off his shots that he needed to, was pulling guillotines that just weren't making any sense. Decision-making just wasn't all there for Matthew Semelsberger, and now he goes from a promising prospect at one point that you thought could be something to an 11-7 MMA fighter that might not be in the UFC anymore. Crazy how things can turn around. But Preston Parsons Won the fight, outworked him against the cage especially. That was the main thing that he did quite well. Even though Semelsberger seemed stronger there and actually ended up getting some takedowns from those positions, it just seems like Preston Parsons had better control whenever he got top control and worked a lot more in the clinch and at range on the feet with volume. So good job, Preston Parsons. He got the job done. We move on. Andrei Arlovski versus Waldo Cortes-Acosta. I've got a lot to say about this fight. First of all, Waldo Cortes-Acosta is very lucky that he got that decision. I'm just going to look up the UFC stats right now. He's very lucky he got that decision, and it's basically down to a flurry that he landed at the end of round 1. My face is going to be really bright while I check this. Round 1, okay, evens on strikes. Okay, maybe I'm a bit off. I thought he could have got round 3 because he looked like he wobbled Arlovski on a few occasions. I thought Arlovski was doing a little bit better than maybe he was in round 1, but it was a very competitive fight. And I wouldn't have been surprised if a judge gave it Arlovski's way. So I thought it was very weird of Waldo Cortes-Acosta to be trash-talking the way he was against Arlovski. Like, dude, you're looking terrible. What are you trash-talking about? Arlovski's an old man. Finish him. Look good. Don't be swinging shots like that, missing nearly all of what you're throwing, only to land a couple of shots here and there that change the tide, purely because Andrei Arlovski's chin is basically dust at this point. Not a great performance from Waldo Cortes-Acosta. Real shit show of a heavyweight matchup, should I say. Both of them just picking at each other, not really committing to much. And occasionally Waldo Cortes-Acosta would wobble Arlovski or shock him to where Arlovski would go on a bit of panic mode and Costa would start swinging terrible shots that missed afterwards. So, not happy with Waldo Cortes-Acosta performance. I just don't understand what heavyweights aren't like. There's so many people in the world. Is it that rare to be 6'3", 6'4"? I mean, it is. Like, I don't see many people my size, but it's like, come on, where are they at? Where are these big guys? We need big guys who are athletes in the UFC. This is what we got. Waldo Cortes-Acosta, top 20 in the world. This is the extent of heavyweights on earth that can fight. Jesus, I know they're in other sports, but come on, dude. Pathetic performance. We move on. He got the win, though, so good for him. I just didn't like that he was talking trash to Arlovski. He's a legend. He's done nothing wrong to you. You're looking terrible against him, and you're bad-mouthing him the whole fight. You looked awful. Moving on. Phil Hawes versus Bruno Ferreira. Just sad. Just sad. I picked Phil Hawes to lose by KO in the first round to Bruno Ferreira. He lost with 5 seconds to go on the clock. Just sad to see. And he actually, I know people are going to make jokes about his chin, and immediately after he got KO'd, I actually said on Twitter, and I'm going to find what I said right now. I said, vicious KO, I feel so bad for Phil Hawes. He has so much talent and skill, but at some point his coach is going to have to be real with him and say, listen, man, you just don't genetically have the chin for combat sports. He actually took some decent shots, but it's just like, the way he reacts when he's under fire is like he's open to be chinned and KO'd. That might be the main problem with Phil Hawes, to be honest with you. That might be the main problem. It's not even that he has a terrible chin. He doesn't have the best of chins. But it's just when he does get hit with shots, he goes into like a mode of like accepting, here comes the KO loss. And he just starts standing there looking at him, not moving his feet. And like leaving openings for these shots to get through. But it actually was looking somewhat competitive at first. But then Bruno Ferreira started landing big shots on him, wobbling him, hurting him, eventually dropping him at the end of the first. I think he was going for flying knees and stuff like that, and knees to the face on Phil Hawes that would wobble him here and there, eventually putting him down against a cage and flatline KOing him again. Like Phil Hawes, it's not just that he's being finished like, you know when Donald Cerrone got finished by Alex Morono and though, you know what I mean? Those types of finishes where he got beaten up and he couldn't get into the fight. And it's not even anything like that. He's getting put out cold all the time. It can't be healthy for him. He has to retire. What more do you have to prove? 35 years of age. You got to try and navigate another pathway for yourself in life, because I know I'm trash talking the fighter here and it's not the best to do, but it's just the way this dude's getting KO'd consecutively. It's dangerous, man. It really is. Got KO'd by Chris Curtis. Came back in 2022. Beat Deron Wynn, who's just an obese flyweight. Roman Dolidze flatline KO'd him as well. 2023. flatline KO'd by Ikram Aliskerov, comes back in 2024, flatline KO'd by Bruno Ferreira. You got to stop, I think, at this point. I think you just got to stop. We move on to another fight that was on the card, which was, great job by Bruno Ferreira, by the way. And he called out Sharon Magomedov, which I'm all for if it happens at UFC Saudi Arabia. We move on. Ricky Simone versus Mario Bautista. Mario Bautista had one of the best performances I've ever seen out of a bantamweight. I mean, this was incredibly impressive. They didn't end up giving Ricky Simone a knockdown, but I do consider that left hook that he landed at the end of the first round a knockdown. So that's why I gave Ricky Simone the first. But Mario Bautista, the pace he was putting on whilst stuffing so many takedowns, using strength and power to do so. It's not like he was, oh wow, he's so nimble to get out of these takedowns. He was pummeling and chucking Simone off of him. And, you know, when he was on the ground with Simone, he would kick up and just force his way back up like Derek Lewis. Mario Bautista looked like a savage in this fight. The power that he had on the feet, the danger that he brought, the body kicks that he was throwing was definitely a major factor here in terms of why Ricky Simone slowed down as much. I'm just shocked that Mario Bautista did not slow down in this fight. Really shocked. This is not the Mario Bautista that I saw in his last performance against Damon Blackshear. That was a completely different looking Mario Bautista. He arguably could have lost that fight as well, by the way. But on damage, I guess you can make an argument. Yeah. Great win from him. Solid performance. Massive dude for bantamweight as well. I thought Ricky Simone, I knew he was going to be shorter, but I thought he was a big dude in terms of, physical mass for bantamweight. He's a stocky dude. But, I can't believe I always think this. Whenever there's a big dude for a division and you see him against someone else, it's like, maybe that dude should be at flyweight. Sometimes you start asking that about people like Peter Yan. Peter Yan, maybe this dude should be at flyweight. Mario Bautista's 5'8", 5'9", and he's not skinny. He's not skin and bone. O'Malley's 5'9", and he's skin and bone with some muscle on him. Mario Bautista is yoked at 5'8" for the division. Big dude. Dominated Ricky Simone in the later rounds, 2 and 3. Simone had moments, but Mario Bautista just kept that pressure on him and eventually got to him by the end of those rounds with some big volume shots. In fact, I thought he was going to finish Simone at the end of the third, but Simone stayed in there and hung on. Sucks for Simone, but Mario Bautista is now in the rankings of the bantamweight division. Good for him. Great performance. We move on. Jim Miller versus Gabriel Benitez. This was very enjoyable to watch. Very happy with the result of this fight as well. Jim Miller, dude. Jim Miller. Amazing performance. Actually an amazing performance. I'm just going to call it what it was. It wasn't just going out there and fluking a KO in round 1 or round 2 with a right hand on Johnny Walker. I'm joking. I'm going to give him praise. I just like riling up the Dagestanis in my live stream. Jim Miller. Gabriel Benitez. Amazing performance by Jim Miller. And it was actually a pretty decent fight and scrap between the two of them. Both guys were landing good shots. Round 1, I think Jim Miller landed the better shots, especially when it came to the leg kicks as well, because he was just chewing up the leg of Gabriel Benitez. You could see visible damage on the leg of Gabriel Benitez at the end of that round as well, and you could see that he was kind of stepping on it a little bit funny. But he was landing good punches as well. Hooks, uppercuts in the clinch, combos in the pocket that he was going for. He still got it. Gabriel Benitez, fair enough he's lost to a bunch of fighters, but he's still there. You know what I mean? He's a fighter in the UFC, training at AKA, and Miller's just putting mustard on these guys. Round 2, he actually gets a takedown, which I was so happy about because it was like, okay, Miller's got an underrated ground game. He'll keep Benitez here for the rest of the round. And he did. He worked him, landed some good shots. I think eventually ended up on the back towards the end of the round, but couldn't finish it off for now. Round 3 comes along. Both guys landing on the feet. Benitez actually starting to do a little bit better at the end of round 2 and 3 when they were on the feet. But in round 3, Miller times a takedown, perfect double leg, gets him down to the canvas, immediately into half guard as well. And as soon as that happened, I was like, thank God he's won. You know what I mean? Because there was short time on the clock. He's won. But instead of just holding on for a decision, no, says Jim Miller. He goes for the finish. Gets the back, gets the rear naked choke. Wasn't under the chin, more of a face crank. Honestly surprised Benitez tapped, but I guess he was gassed out and he was just like, make it stop, the pain. Jim Miller gets it done by face crank submission in the third round. Dominant performance. Called out a bunch of good names that he could fight. Paul Felder. He also called out another name that I can't quite remember the name of, but there's other opponents that he could possibly take on. Bobby Green is an option for him. People are saying Paddy Pimblett, but the reason why they're saying that is so that if Paddy Pimblett beats him, Paddy Pimblett gets nothing in terms of respect, and they can all say, well, you were supposed to beat him. And if Jim Miller beats him, Pimblett can face absolute humiliation. We know the game of these people. There's no winning with them. But Jim Miller, I think he should be looking towards Rankins. Why not Rankins? I know Paul Felder's a fun fight at UFC 300. He also jokingly called out Brock Lesnar, by the way. But why not actually... He said he's not going to retire at UFC 300, you know. He just said he wants to be on the card. He mentioned that he's going to fight onwards after that in an interview recently. Bobby Green's number 14 in the rankings. Why not? It's a great matchup. They're both OGs of the game. Put it in the co-main... Well, not the co-main. Put it on UFC 300's prelims. And it'd be a sick fight. So I'm down for that. Bobby Green, Jim Miller, make it happen. UFC 300, 2 OGs, scrapping it out. And that way, if Jim Miller wins, he's in the rankings again. You know what I mean? And we'll start looking towards the top 10 maybe. This is going to be fun. We'll see how far he can go. But I also think it's a very winnable matchup for Bobby Green. But then again, Miller's got hands. Dangerous low kicks. He could find Bobby Green's chin, seeing as Green might have just had his career ruined by that ref in the Jalen Turner fight. We move on to the main event. Magomed Ankalaev versus Johnny Walker. All right, fair enough. I should have picked him. Okay? Should have picked Ankalaev. Sometimes these matchups come around where I just have a feeling that they're going to get a finish. And that does change the logical, well, he's lost this many times and Ankalaev hasn't lost that many times. And, well, Ankalaev had never been this and Walker's been this. Like, it's easy to just look at the stats, but sometimes I go gut feeling and go, Edwards is going to KO Usman. You know what I mean? He's going to head kick KO Usman. And then boom, Edwards does it. Sometimes I have those matchups where I'm like, okay, I know this don't make sense, but man, I got a feeling that this guy's going to get this done. You know? And although Walker lost, he had moments in round 1 where he looked improved with his kicks and his movement. But at the end of the day, I feel like he was merely buying himself time by being goofy. Ankalaev, one thing that you need to respect about him, and I think in this matchup that I've now learned to respect about him, we've never seen him against someone too wild. Well, Kutalaba was, but he got a little bit over-aggressive in that Kutalaba fight the first time, and then the stoppage was whatever. He ends up clearing it up in the second one. But Walker's throwing axe kicks, spinning back fists, wheel kicks now and again, doing capoeira stuff, and the whole time Ankalaev is stood upright, parrying with his hands, staying composed, chin tucked, slowly edging his way forward, feinting a jab out there, tapping with his low kicks. He stayed incredibly composed. And I thought that Walker would be too wild for him in the early round. And it would be dangerous for Ankalaev because sometimes people do things so correctly that they don't like it when someone's not doing things correctly. You know what I mean? They're like, why don't you... No, they like the Jan Blachowicz-Ankalaev type matchup, but when Walker comes along, it's like, whoa, he's throwing axe kicks 3 times around and 5 spinning back fists and throwing big shots in the clinch in close. And I thought Walker would be able to do something from that. But it turns out Walker just can't box, and that is the problem. Chin, say what you want about it, they're light heavyweights. You get caught on the chin, there's a chance you're going to get slept. Walker maybe more than others, his chin's not the best. But it's not like Ankalaev's known for punch power. But I think it's just the boxing. Walker has such a reach advantage over these opponents. I'm going to go to his Tapology now. Just to check. I'm pretty sure he has like a ridiculously long reach. But his boxing is just not there. And that's what we find. You know, his kicks were there against Anthony Smith. But he's got an 82-inch reach at light heavyweight. And I think Ankalaev has something like a 75 or a 76. 75. You've got a 7-inch reach advantage over this guy. Where's the stiff jab down the pipe? That's something that he needs to be working on. But Ankalaev lands the right hand as Walker's going for a kick, I believe it was. Catches him right on the jaw and then follows up afterwards. And I thought he broke Walker's nose. It looked like he might have done. Shattered his face because Walker immediately starts holding his face in pain. Ankalaev gets the job done by second round TKO. I know I didn't get the pick right. I should have just, blah, 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 picked the massive favorite. And that's what we do on paper. Sometimes I got a feeling about fights and I'm going to go for it. Wouldn't have had the Edwards KO over Usman moment otherwise, where I picked that one. Should Pereira really beat Adesanya when he coming into the UFC after looking bad against Bruno Silva? Adesanya's better than Bruno Silva. Look how he looked against Bruno Silva. Sometimes you just know something's going to happen and I'm not going to go against it. You know? I'm not going to say, well, ignore everything I think about this and how I think it's going to go. I'm picking Ankalaev. But Ankalaev got it done. Showed composure and really good discipline of the mind as well. Something that needs to be talked about in this matchup too is the fact that this is a guy who's been done dirty. He's really been done dirty recently. Was supposed to fight for the belt. Anthony Smith got injured. It kind of put a dampening on his performance. They still, okay, you need to do one more. Fights Jan Blachowicz. Goes to a draw. Feels like he got wronged there. Okay, whatever, let's move on to the next one. He got wronged there as well. Walker arguably should have been DQ'd. He kneed him illegally in the face and Walker was deemed not fit to continue by the referee. Should have been DQ'd. Went to a no contest. Either way, he still lost his chance at a title shot. Had to redeem it again. I thought all of that problem was going to lead to a Ankalaev that wasn't as free-flowing as a Walker would be in there. Walker fights without a care in the world sometimes. And I think if Ankalaev's got a little bit emotional and started to try and go for Walker maybe and try and settle the score because there's a bit of bad blood, that maybe Walker would find an opening for those axe kicks. But Ankalaev walked him down, stayed patient, very composed, landed that right hand on the jaw side, putting down Walker, and I think earned himself a title shot against Alex Pereira in April. But the problem is this question: when is Ramadan? Ramadan timetable. 10th of March to the 9th of April. And when is UFC 300? First of all, this isn't the best 300 main event, is it? Hopefully this will be the co-main or something. 13th of April. So it's going to be a tough one. That might be actually a factor when it comes to the matchup with Alex Pereira. Isn't Alex Pereira Muslim as well? There's different levels of Muslim. Let's be real. But, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. That could be a factor in the fight. That's the only reason I would think as to why Ankalaev maybe wouldn't want to fight at UFC 300 and instead Jamal Hill might get the shot. But either way, Ankalaev should get a title shot next. Regardless of when it happens, it should happen. Really impressive performance. Prove me wrong. I've picked against him before because he has some fights. Santos drops him. He holds Santos against the cage for 4 rounds. There's certain fights in his career where I'm like, when there's danger, he's a bit different. And I thought that would be where Walker could take advantage. But to be fair, he looked good. Ankalaev showed that he's got some pop in his shots, in his hands especially as well. And got the job done. Really good performance. Yeah, I had something else that I was going to say. I actually think he probably would beat Alex Pereira. Because Pereira throws low kicks moving backwards with his hips square as well. And Ankalaev's going to be pushing forwards with a stiff jab and shooting takedowns. And I think that's going to work for him. But I think Jamal Hill actually has the best shot of beating Ankalaev because of his takedown defense, his chin, and his power on the feet and boxing ability as well to go tit for tat with Ankalaev. So, yeah, that's my take on that. Great performance by Ankalaev. Solid win. One of them's getting slept, Dagestani fans. I swear to God, dude. That fan base, one of them's going to get slept one day. I want you to know that. Unless they fucking retire after 2 title defenses, one of them's going to sleep on pay-per-view. And it will happen. One day, I'll be 50. 50 years old, 25 years from now. Double my lifespan. It will happen. And I'll wait for that day. Because I want you to call him a chicken and a loser, like you call every other fighter. Fucking annoying. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Toodle pip. Paul Craig's the best light heavyweight in the world.